Hi, my name is Vikram Shah, and I will be talking to you about macroeconomic equilibrium. I will be talking about how to graph a recessionary gap, graph an inflationary gap, graph stagflation, and how to fix them. There are some terms that you need to know in order to excel in this unit, and here are some words that could help give you a head start in excelling in the unit. What is a recession? A recession is a significant decline in activity across the economy, lasting longer than a few months. It is visible in industrial production, employment, real income, and wholesale retail trade. What is inflation? Inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services is rising, and subsequently purchasing power is falling. What is stagflation? Stagflation is a condition of slow economic growth and relatively high unemployment, a time of stagnation accompanied by a rise in prices or inflation. Open market operations, purchase and sale of U.S. Treasury and federal agency securities. The federal funds rate equals the amount charged for loans. Banks charge each other. Policy Tools Part 2 Discount Rate. Interest rate charged to commercial banks and other depository institutions on loans they receive from their regional Federal Reserve banks. The lending facility. Policy Tools Part 3 Reserve Requirements. The amount of funds that a depository institution must hold in reserve against specified deposit liabilities. Here you have the graph showing fiscal policy at equilibrium. It displays that unemployment is at 5% and CPI is at 3%. Here we have the depiction of the fiscal policy recessionary gap. As you can see, unemployment is high at around 8% and CPI is low, and we can say that it's around 2%. Fixing a recessionary gap. You would use an expansionary policy. Government spending would go up, taxes would go down, consumption would go up, and aggregate demand would go up. Fixing a recessionary gap. Aggregate demand increases, consumption increases, government spending increases, causing inflation and causing the money supply to shift to the left. Fiscal policy inflationary gap. First, you start by graphing the long-run aggregate supply. Then you graph the short-run aggregate supply. And then you graph the aggregate demand. And because it is too high because of inflation, it is to the right. To fix an inflationary gap, you have to use contractionary policy to cut government spending and bring back the aggregate demand to equilibrium. Money market fixing an inflationary gap. It is a contractionary policy. implying that government spending needs to be cut, which would cause the money supply to shift to the right. Stagflationary gap. First you graph the long-run aggregate supply, then you graph aggregate demand, and lastly, because the short-run aggregate supply has changed, you graph short-run aggregate supply. Fiscal policy fixing a stagflationary gap. The objective is to use a contractionary policy so you can get the short-run aggregate supply back to the equilibrium. Money market fixing a stagflationary gap. Due to the contraction style of this policy, the money supply is going to shift to the right because inflation decreases. Thanks for watching my PowerPoint. Hope it helped in your studying for the AP exam. And yeah, okay. 16, 17, 18, 19,